Skeletor gets his steed. Here's a look at the Mattel Master Universe Origins Panthor, the Savage Cat. Fiercely obedient to Skeletor, Panthor carries his nefarious master into combat. Seems a bit strange that we're looking at Panthor sideways right now, but there's a method to this humbled reviewer's madness, although sometimes it's questionable. What I am going to do is going to take my futuristic tape measure, and what I want to do is I want to figure out the length of Panthor and provide it to you, the viewing audience. Now, I couldn't simply just take the tape measure and start it here, because the beam's not, well, the tape measure isn't smart enough. We haven't moved that far enough in technology for it to know that that's the end of Panthor's tail. It wouldn't probably even know what Panthor is. No, in fact, that laser would continue its way past the desk, further down across the floor, and eventually make its way to the only stopping point, which would be about the wall about 4 feet from here. Anybody, I'm sure, smart enough in the comments section would tell me, Panthor, there's no way that Panthor could be that long, and you would be absolutely correct. You're very, very smart viewers. What I am going to do, though, is I'm going to create myself a blockade. I'm going to put my hand right there on the very end of what I feel to be his tail, and I'm going to stop the tape measure by using my hand. Right there. So according to from the front here to where my hand stopped the tape measure laser, you're looking at Panthor being approximately 10.216 inches. I say approximately just because depending on where my hand was at the time. We can also switch that over for those that want to see what Panthor is in centimeters. Happy to oblige. Then you're looking at the figure being 25.9, almost 26 centimeters long. Taking Panthor and spinning him around for a little bit more comfortable viewing, I can also bring in, for some comparisons, the originally looked at Master Universe Origins Battle Cat. Astute viewers, you're very smart after all, would probably deduce that this is in fact the exact same mold, and you would be correct. Similar to the original vintage line, Battle Cat and Panthor were in fact the same figure, although, of course, tweaks were done to the paint, and the original Panthor would have also been flocked, which sadly isn't the case here with the Origins release. Further, doing some size comparisons, we can bring in some of the other villain Master Universe figures that we've had a look at. There's Merman. We can also bring in Beastman. And we can also bring in Evil Lyn, and I'm sure you would be asking yourself, well, what about Skeletor? You obviously have to display him with some sort of Skeletor, and I do, and I will. What I am actually going to be displaying him with is the Battle Armor version of Skeletor. Personally, my favorite standout figure so far in this entire Master Universe Origins line. Yes, I know you could always go OG with the original Skeletor, but I kind of like the look of Battle Armor Skeletor, so if anything is going to be riding on top of Panthor, I'm probably going to be choosing Battle Armor Skeletor as my preferred Skeletor to do that. A single quick cut later, and let's have a closer look at Panthor. Now, I will say, picking up the figure for myself, I'm not necessarily disappointed the fact that this one doesn't have flocking. Flocking was something that was really circulated around in the 80s as a gimmick to a figure, where essentially I think you would release a pulse to it, like an electrical pulse, and then you'd fling things at it. I know I'm not using the best way to scientifically describe it, but it would allow that material, generally a plastic, to adhere that flocking material. And then again, everything that was flocked would have almost like a kind of felt feel to it. It would have almost like a suede soft, I'm really doing my least best effort to describe this, but you basically would get a soft fur feel to anything that was flocked. The downside to that was anything that was flocked over time would eventually start wearing down. So my original Panthor, for example, I think the places that were most susceptible to flock wear was right around the area of the nose and right around the areas of the paws. I think that was the thing that's got the most contact. Now, of course, they didn't go the flock route here with their release of Panthor, although I hear rumblings that we are going to be getting ourselves a flocked version of Panthor down the road. In the meantime, though, getting a plastic version of him is fine and good, and I'm not, again, disappointed by the fact he isn't flocked, even though the original one was. I do think it's a decent-looking figure, but right out of the packaging, I do have one serious problem with it. It's got super, not trying to drop it, super loose legs. Not only are the lower legs really super loose when it comes to rotating them, but in some cases, the front leg, the back leg isn't so bad, but it's basically this one leg right here, which I don't know if you can see it or not, is super loose. The original Battle Cat didn't have that problem, and I can already assume that mold degradation or mold reuse is causing the problem. Maybe it's just the way it was assembled in the factory. I don't know. Just seems like this one leg is super loose. Getting a closer look at the head sculpt, though, really super nice work done by the folks over at Mattel. Again, for the comparison's sake, let's bring in Battle Cat because obviously you guys will want to see it. Yeah, nothing different between the two, but I will say that fresh new coat of paint on Panthor, boy, does it ever stand out when you especially compare it against its original mold brother. While I did like the original Battle Cat, I will say, and I probably had mentioned it even in the review, was that the eyes I felt were just a little too lost. They should have used a different green altogether. Maybe a lighter green, I'm not sure. But the dark little pupils were fine, but the rest of the eyes sort of just got lost in the mix because the rest of the fur was also that same green color. Not the case here, certainly when it comes to Panthor. That yellow certainly does look super rich when you got it against that purple plastic. Boy, does that yellow ever look super sharp. The eyes are also very different as well. As you hopefully can see, Battle Cat, or Cringer, minus of course the saddle here, Cringer would have had more circular pupils, where Panthor actually has slits, like what you would expect with a regular cat. There is a little bit of paint, unfortunately, and I'm only pointing it out on mine. It probably may not be the case on everybody's. I've got just a little bit of yellow that's trickled its way down. It kind of looks like Panthor's a little sad. Perhaps he's sad because Battle Cat actually had something that fit onto his head. Unfortunately, though, Panthor, like its original release, never had it. If you wanted to see what it looked like, I'm going to go ahead and take Battle Cat's armor piece, the one that goes over top of his head, and put it in place. It does seem a little strange because you're not used to seeing it on a purple cat. But it does fit in place because, again, it's the exact same mold. As for the rest of the saddling is exactly the same from one to the other, just the coloring is different from the red to the very obviously stated teal. I do like the saddle. The saddle fits generally pretty good. On the underside of the saddle, it attaches the exact same way. Several different adjustable slots, and then you can either tighten it or loosen it. I still don't understand why we have to have extra holes in there, because you're really allotting for extra clearance, but the belt doesn't go any tighter than what it does. If anything, I could probably afford bringing it over one more time, but it's sort of like the dark setting of a toaster. I'm never really going to want to burn toast, so I don't understand why they would have to put the extra holes in there. That is not a nitpick, that's just an observation. Go ahead and look at, again, the two cats side to side. The molding is obviously identical to one another. The pads, the underpads, the legs, and of course the faces are exactly the same. And along with that, that also means the articulation on these are also going to be the same as well. Everybody get a good comparison already? Yes? Okay, we'll move Battle Cat out of the way. I wanted to make sure, again, I showed you guys enough of the comparisons from one to the other before moving on to the articulation here on Panthor. Similar, if not exact, to obviously Battle Cat, his head does move up and down. You can also rotate the head back and forth this way as well. This isn't super loose. I find like the head is a little on the starting end of loose things. The mouth is also something that can open and close. The nice detailing on the interior of the tongue. Look at those taste buds. You can quote me on that if you want. The mouth does open and close. Nice paint actually on the interior of the mouth. The gums, of course, done in red. Nice bright white teeth. I guess Skeletor probably brushes Panthor's teeth. Not an easy task when you look at a cat this size. The legs move forward and back, but again, like this one leg, boy, that's such a shame. Already out of the packaging, and that's super loose. It does move forward and back. It doesn't hinge out, so in case anybody was wondering, does the legs move out? The answer is no. They only just move forward and back. This one leg is a little on the tighter side. This leg is a little on the looser side. It's like the odd couple. You can bend the knees, somewhat hind knees of the legs. And you can also rotate those back and forth as well. Same thing basically applies to the back as well. Hind legs move back and forth. You can bend the knee, and that just bends the back end of it. So instead of actually bending the front, it bends at the back. I know, again, I'm stating the obvious. But that moves back and forth, and it does also have tail articulation as well. So it can be a happy cat, or it can be an upset cat, because Skeletor isn't cleaning his litter. In case you guys are curious to see how you can put a Skeletor figure, I would ideally probably choose a Skeletor figure over, say, someone like Beastman. But you're going to go ahead and take Skeletor, just going to bend his knees. Just make sure his legs are sort of brought forward, and just literally straddle the saddle. You can also quote me on that as well if you want. Just a great looking figure. Great accompanying piece. Sort of one of those cases where I think if you didn't already have a Skeletor and then somebody got you a Panthor as a Christmas present or a birthday present, it would seem a little out of place because you're probably not going to be wanting to display Panthor just by himself. In case also you're curious, you know what? Let's move him over. I know I had mentioned before, just seeing where I've actually put him. I mentioned before I usually use, or I was going to be using, Battle Armor Skeletor in this case, but I think for the purpose of displaying, let's just bend his legs here. Also put his headpiece on. Seems a little out of place to not put the headpiece on. Let's go ahead and bring He-Man in, just so you guys can see the difference between the two. I know you guys already know what it looks like, but just to show you how the two, the good guy and the bad guy, look being displayed on top of their cats. For my own personal collection, I tend to display He-Man and regular OG Skeletor on their own with weapons in hand. And then when it comes to displaying these, surprisingly enough, I end up displaying Battle Cat and now Panthor with the Battle Armor versions of He-Man and Skeletor, just because I kind of like the way that they look on top. Especially Battle Armor Skeletor looks really super cool when he's sitting on top of his now trusty steed, Panthor. On the one end, it would have been nice if Mattel could have incorporated the same flocking technique to their Origins Panthor that the original vintage toy had as well. The downside, though, to incorporating flocking is, for starters, it's a lot more involved and more expensive. They have to run an electrical charge to the plastic and literally shoot particles at it that will adhere to the plastic. Anybody that understands flocking could probably describe it a lot better than what I just did in the last few seconds. But flocking is an involved process, and it isn't long-term either. Anybody that has had anything flocked in their collection from their original 80s toys, go back to those toys, and you'll see how much wear the flocking has come off. In fact, you could easily check online to eBay and see loose examples of Panthor to see how many examples are out there and the extreme cases in which the flocking has worn off. At the time that I still had the toy in my collection, the flock had worn off the face and the areas around the paws. That was, I think, the only area that was really affected on the flocking end of things. But I've seen examples of Panthor, a flocked Panthor, well, not so much flocked anymore online, where the cat is almost completely bare. The flock has completely almost worn right off. So you have to consider that, of course, as well. Kids are going to be playing with this, roughhousing with this, and that will shorten the life of flock. If anything, I think leaving it off probably was the better suited thing for releasing this as a retail store Panthor. Because, of course, it gives you then the opportunity to get a full idea of a nice sculpted purple plastic Panthor. And the flocking, of course, would mask a lot of those sculpted details. If anything, if this still is the idea that people want a flocked Panthor, then yeah, just release it as an online exclusive or a convention exclusive where people that still want the niche of that original gimmick of having the flock in their original Panthor and still want it on this release, then they can go and pick it up either through a convention or they can pick it up online or have it available that way. Or if they wanted to, again, they could probably release it in a smaller quantity and still release it to retail stores. But I'm still content for the idea of displaying this Panthor sans le flock. Even though flock is a good idea on paper, flock never lasts. Flock never lasts forever. And you can quote me on that. What do you guys think of Panthor? Is this something you've picked up for yourself? Or based on this review, and this review alone, what do you guys think of Panthor? For your video question for today, from the vintage line of Masters of the Universe figures, what is your favorite incorporated gimmick? That's a good idea. For me, I kind of like many faces. The idea of being able to spin his faces inside his domed helmet. I also really like the Battle Armor gimmick on Battle Armor He-Man and Battle Armor Skeletor. But what is your favorite gimmick that was part of the original Master Universe Classics line? I don't even want to say Classics, but you know what I was meaning. If you guys are also new to this channel and enjoying all the content you've been seeing on a regular basis and yet have had the chance to hit that subscribe button down below, don't postpone any further what you can accomplish right now, right at this minute, by moving your cursor down below, clicking the subscribe button down below, clicking also the bell notification that's just right next door to it, it's like a next door neighbor. And make sure you're also coming back to this channel regularly, because not only are we going to be looking at more Master Universe Origins figures, but there's also a whole ton of other reviews lined up and coming your way as well. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.